It never got to even the notion of creation of a state within a state, or a state within whatever, as you described it, a federal system. And it never made it to a mapping state. So whoever's creating a map, they're creating it out of thin air. It never even...
He said that.
No, I thought he said this was the proposed map.
No. He said the YouTuber was the one
that this was like actually mapped visually. Their proposal was just a general proposal.
Right, but they didn't even...
This is the idea that we have. And I know, like, that the video that I linked explains, like, that the proposal, like, very quickly fell through, primarily due to the opposition from the Grand Mufti.
But they didn't even discuss any territory, any places where this would go there and this would go here. They never even got to any sort of territory cartographic sort of space.
They had like the general idea that these are the territories like from the early 30s where the Jews are a majority, where there are these like
I don't know. I'm going to do more research, but
there are these purchases of land that have happened like in the 20s. Like these are that would be Israel, like according to this agreement. I mean, as far as I'm seeing, like they actually did like go public with this agreement, and there was like a public.
But there was no agreement. There was some initial talks, and it fell through, and there is no official agreement on record. So I'll leave it at that.
No, the agreement is just between Ben Gurion and Alami. It's not.
No, it fell apart. They didn't. Those two people never reached a conclusion. That's my point. They never actually agreed.
We have breaking news about high speed pursuit operating right now on satellite everywhere. They say the driver's 41-year-old John. 2 minutes are right out of state. We got breaking news of a high speed pursuit. They stack quickly.
I think Husseini was his name. Like he was the primary opponent to this. It like basically shut down.
Please click on my link. Please click on the link and then also do more research. But I don't think that's the case. But I have a whole host of more research. I'm not a fan of videos, but I'm going to do some real world book research.
I mean, okay, so for your own personal beliefs aside, this sort of gatekeeping about who is a Jew and who is a bad Jew and who's an un-Jew, it is a little ridiculous, right, Yaakov? Like we need to be a little more accepting and pluralistic of different beliefs and relationships with Israel.
I think I've always been open to discussing that.
Yeah, so that's kind of the point. So I think you actually don't disagree that much with Beinart's like premise, you know?
Yeah, I have a more tightly constructed view of like what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. That's all. I'm more closely aligned with Daniel than I am with you.
So what's acceptable? I mean, don't we live in it? Like our tradition is one where we question and interrogate and self-reflect. Like we don't like police ideas, right? Like I don't understand. How is this compatible with your Judaism? I say, oh, you guys are not Jews, you're marginal, you should be silenced.
Who says that's not happening in society, in Israeli society? It's like, you think...
We're talking about American society, American Jews.
It's happening every single day. Like the discussion is active, the discussion is live. It's happening all the time, everywhere.
What we're debating now is the legislative and the silencing by powerful Jewish institutions that claim to represent American Jews are trying to create control and create consensus in the Jewish discourse, right? All right, let's move on. I'm going to talk about a little bit about why these sort of why it endangers Israel and Jewish people in order to place Zionism on this pedestal above in our religion and in the way we express our American Jewish identity. Okay. I think we've established that it is on a pedestal compared to like Jewish tradition for a lot of people, and it does sort of anchor Jewish identity. So I think we ended talking about it is idolatry in practice. We have built an altar and thrown an entire society into flames. The korbanot, or the religious offerings, extend beyond Gaza. They include Israeli Jews themselves, and it may take decades to grasp how gravely this war endangers them. Ziad al-Nakhala, who at the age of 3 saw Israel murder his father when it massacred Palestinians in Khan Yunis in 1956, currently heads Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Israel has already killed more than 100 times as many Palestinians in the Gaza in this war as it killed back then. How many 3-year-olds will be seeking revenge 69 years from now? But our Moloch wants more. To defend Israel, American Jews are harming our community and our country. More than half a century ago, the writer I.F. Stone noted that Israel is creating a kind of moral schizophrenia in world Jewry. Jews, whose welfare in our own community depends on the maintenance of a secular, non-racial, pluralistic societies, were championing a Jewish state in which the ideal is racial and exclusionist. Today, as progressives turn against Israel, they are forcing American Jews to choose: defend exclusion in Israel or inclusion in the United States. And some of America's leading Jewish institutions are choosing the former. The choice is making American Jewish life more insular and more repressive. After October 7, the 92nd Street Y, which for decades has symbolized New York Jewish cosmopolitanism by hosting writers like James Baldwin, Susan Sontag, and this other guy that I can't pronounce, canceled its annual literary series rather than host writers who boycott Israel. At the same time, Brandeis University, named for America's most famous Jewish advocate of free speech, banned its chapter of Students for Justice in Palestine and began advertising itself as a campus where Jewish could feel safe in their Jewish identity because they wouldn't encounter fierce criticism of Israel. This is
25, 37, 92.
for our safety. But now that authoritarian right-wing parties, from the GOP to France's National Rally to the Alliance for Germany, have become more pro-Israel than their left-leaning competitors, some Jewish leaders are making a different bet, that we can thrive in white Christian ethno-states. This is where our theology of Jewish statehood leads. To defend tribal supremacy in Israel, we are empowering tribal supremacy in the United States and Europe, where we are not even the dominant tribe. We're also offering up one final
25, 37, 92.
the then prosecutor of the ICC and her family, when she was considering launching an investigation into Israeli war crimes. In 2024, after a new ICC prosecutor did propose such investigations, AIPAC applauded the House of Representatives for voting to impose sanctions not only on him, but also his 2 sons. This thuggery degrades the legal system born after World War II and expanded after the genocides of Rwanda and former Yugoslavia to restrain the predatory actions of states. It is a gift to Vladimir Putin, Modi, Jinping, and any other tyrant who worries that he may be shamed by human rights groups or prosecuted by the ICC. If Israel can destroy Gaza with impunity, warns Agnes Callamard, Amnesty's Secretary General, it will leave international law likely in its death throes and nothing yet to take its place save brutalist national interest and sheer greed. In our zeal to protect Israel no matter what, this is the world we're helping to create. There is another path, but it requires recognizing what Leibowitz taught, that our capacity for justice and injustice, we are no different from anyone else. It may not seem like a big conceptual shift. Most Jews don't walk down the street thinking we are immune from sin, yet that assumption permeates our communal conversations about Israel. it is always someone else's fault. Israel expels 750,000 Palestinians in 1948. It's because the Arab governments told them to leave. Israel occupies millions of West Bank Palestinians who lack citizenship or the right to vote. It's because Palestinians wouldn't accept their peace offers. Human rights groups accuse Israel of practicing apartheid. Why aren't they focused on Syria and Iran? Student protesters demand Israel stop obliterating Gaza. Oh, they're anti-Semites, or at best, wildly uninformed. The alibis change, but the bottom line remains the same. Jews are victim. Israel has done nothing fundamentally wrong. For generations, Jews...
69, 98, 25.
For Israel in the liturgies, removing Jewish statehood from Jewish identity, and for most Jews around the world, it's not clear what is left. But the benefit of recognizing that Jews are not fundamentally different from other people is that it allows us to learn from their experience. Jewish exceptionalism is less exceptional than we think. We're not the only people to use the story of victimhood to justify supremacy. Well, he talks about South Africa as an example. So I think that answers your question a little bit, Daniel. You were saying about like how enmeshed American Jewish identity is with Israel and criticizing Israel.
I don't think. I think I was laughing because like the entire statement is kind of in a loop. If you don't believe that it's inherently wrong, if you don't believe it's like a crime, and you're only like very biased about the war in Gaza, not mentioning in a word like the other side, then it's like it's hard for me to take it like really serious as text about. It's like anti-Zionism working backwards to justify the anti-Zionism conclusion.
You got something to say, Benny?
I think it's funny. It's just like, oh, anti-Semitism. Like every time I hear that word, honestly, I laugh a little bit more, and it loses more power.
Well, it's funny coming from you laughing because you take pride in being an anti-Semite. So why would anyone here listen to your perspective of anti-Semitism?
Because I represent the mainstream. According to you, the mainstream is anti-Semitic, right?
No, I didn't say the mainstream is anti-Semitic. I think the loud voices and the violent voices are anti-Semitic, not the mainstream.
Oh, okay. So you don't think
the silent majority are not anti-Semitic.
Okay. So you don't think anti-Semitism has been prominent throughout history for the last 2,000 years amongst specifically Christians?
I'm just not saying it's mainstream.
Okay, so I represent the prominent voices. How about that?
The loud voices, the violent voices, the hateful voices, yes?
The prominent.
I mean, so in fairness,
the loud ones.
The passage I just read. The passage I just read does talk about it. Israel and Zionism gives rise to Christian nationalism. I don't know if you sympathize in any way with Christian nationalism in the U.S.
Christian nationalism has existed for 2,000 years. I don't
Right, but historically,
Israel existing is
the
Templars, the Hospitallers, the Crusades,
right.
the Anglican
Historically,
Church.
Jews have not
Church of
aligned
Sweden.
themselves. Now Jews do. Now Israel align themselves with the Christian supremacists all over the world because they see themselves as
Like a bad thing or a good thing that they're making friends?
historically they wanted to live in a society that is free, right, and that has benefited Jews. But now they're sort of shifting and they're embracing exclusionary supremacist ideologies because they think it gives them legitimacy.
no the
The Jews should be in Israel and the Christians should be in Christian countries?
the political reality has shifted, and Israel has decided that it needed to make friends and allies with certain people, so they were looking to see who are the most likely allies.
Yeah, like
people who
not sure if I understand. You're saying that Christian nationalism is dangerous and Zionism is dangerous because it supports and promotes Christian nationalism, which we know is
No,
dangerous.
I'm not talking about Zionism itself. I'm talking about how modern Zionists and Jewish institutions and sort of the establishment of the Jewish establishment have now embraced white supremacists effectively because it serves Israel's purpose against the interests of the larger Jewish community. In general, we should support free countries, free societies. We should not support Nazi organizations. No, you don't like that. Hey, Daniel, you don't like that Netanyahu attacked Nazis?
You literally embrace Nazis in your cause
Your government does that.
anti-Zionist. Like,
What do you mean? Your government held like an anti-Semitism conference with all Nazi organizations. You had anti-Semitism conference
literally
in
your
Israel.
movement.
Literally
your movement is literally your movement is all about Jew hatred.
She's talking about the far right of Germany.
Israel is in bed now with the far right. In Israel and in America and in
Yeah, Israel coordinates with the far right in Europe.
It's not a secret. Thank you.
But I'm just trying to ask, is that like a bad thing or a good thing?
In my view, it's bad. We shouldn't associate with exclusionary.
You're saying that Israel should only be friends with half of the politicians of Europe.
Israel should associate with people who champion freedom of religion and humans and values that.
And if there are far right nationalists who support those virtues, should Israel befriend those far right?
Yeah, then why didn't Israel founding
right? You agree? Yeah.
So maybe the real Zionists should have identified as Nazis out of like pragmatism, right?
Buttercup, the thing is that when it benefited Jews, they did support secularism and like openness and inclusion and all of that. But right now, it doesn't benefit Jews. Is what benefits Jews, especially from an Israel-loving standpoint, is the state of Israel. And the state of Israel is far from inclusionary. So why would you want to promote inclusionary ideologies if your state does not have it?
Well, I think that's. I don't think
Israel is actually very inclusionary. To be honest,
I think that,
yeah, probably too inclusive.
That's right, Benny Adam, because
what Buttercup
is sort of pretending is that the world is flat and all of the politics in Israel are not affected by the outside world. So Israel has to pay attention to the to the Muslims that are throughout the Middle East, as well as the Europeans, as well as America. They have to understand what the global political climate is and how it will affect
and the
Israel.
Chinese and the Indians and the Russians.
And the Chinese and everybody else. And Israel as a country has to account for those things. It can't pretend that the world is flat and that it has to play by certain rules that other people don't have to play by. Like that's suicidal.
Yeah, but Buttercup wouldn't be dead if it committed the suicide, though, so. Kind of makes it more like murder.
So it's just a coincidence that, when Israel's promoting a more exclusionary ideology, and back home, Jews promote it in the West.
I mean, Arab countries practice exclusionary efforts, right?
I'm agnostic as to whether or not exclusionary efforts are good for a state.
I think modern Jewish identity. Go ahead. Modern Jewish identity has evolved in a different way.
Japan has massive exclusionary measures. Massive.
All the states have exclusionary measures. That's how they set up citizenship, statehood, uniform law, voting rights, right? Like, it's a trade-off. Like, you could say, no borders, and then just vague cities, and then armies that are campaigned for when an offense is brought before some town council. Like, they've done models before. We determined that exclusionary citizenship and borders with a uniform rule of law throughout the land, with mostly a sandwich that at least the people can understand the laws that are written in. Those are better backbones than I don't know, high standards or something.
The EU disagrees in the Schengen zone.
How do you mean? What does the EU disagree with?
The EU has a project of gradually expanding open borders. So, if you're in Germany, you can go to France with absolutely no like kind of limit it's kind of like going from Texas to neighboring U.S. state.
Yeah, but those people are in the federation together. They aren't.
No, it's not a federation.
It also doesn't really work yet. Like, they'd love to get that, and they might get to something close like that, but they don't have the same setup, the same historical backbone as the U.S.
Yeah, Lebanon and Syria are basically the same people, and they don't even have open borders between each other.
Of course not. We need closed borders.
It currently exists, and is working fine. Like you can just have your
Yeah, there are some
the equivalent of your social security number in USA, and you can just walk from Spain to Poland. It's no problem. You can go to Germany, to Switzerland.
Yeah,
what about to Russia?
That allows it to happen. A lack of terrorism.
I think
where does the free walking stop?
People bring up Europe a lot when they talk about the failures of multiculturalism, but I feel like in America we figure out a model that works much better, and where people are much more intimate. You don't have this kind of segregated.
Ice.
I don't know if I would agree that America is dealing with multiculturalism better than Europe. They're two different systems.
In my experience, Muslims who immigrate here are very well integrated. They go to public schools, they're in the workforce, and they are not seen as a threat to society. Extremism isn't such a threat to it. We're worried about homegrown white people.
It's also the case in Europe, even in countries that have at this recent times been so conservative and xenophobic as to leave the EU, like UK, their Muslims are actually hugely integrated and well. And the problem is when people who lean right wing, they want to say these groups are not well integrated. Usually, it's not exclusive to them, but as everyone else. But then also them, they have no idea what it is. Sociologists define more than 7 different axes of integration, how a successful integration along those axes is measured. None of these people have any clue about that, but they want to say these people have been integrating well enough.
It is true that usually Arabs who have or Muslims have a better time integrating in America and Canada, and I would say Australia as well, as opposed to Europe, because the states are ethno states, whereas Canada, America, and Australia are not exactly ethno states. Such. They have a long history of integration and various different
misuse of term there. Ethno state usually refers to something that's almost by definition bad. It's all the term.
I'm not saying it's a good.
Okay, how are they not ethno states?
But they are.
They're nation states. An ethno state means something.
Why are they not ethno states?
They are ethnically. So the identity of the nation is ethnically defined. Poland is for the Poles. Germany is for the Germans. Yes, are there
Ireland for the Irish?
Yeah. Are there border areas? Sure, but even historically speaking, when those borders were drawn, tended to integrate them into the dominant.
So it sounds like the safe and peaceful multiculturalism of Europe rests on existing ethnic states.
No, they're not. Maybe
they're not multi-ethnic. They're ethno-national states.
The term ethno state is problematic.
Okay, so you say they're not ethno states.
I'm defining it.
No, ethno state has a specific term.
Okay, what does it apply to?
Far right ideas about purging minorities or taking away their rights.
Which states are those?
I don't know if there are any ethno states today.
Okay, so there are no good examples of an ethno state. Benny Adam, are you fine with nation state?
Poland?
This is why the AFD and Hillary are really.
Okay, so is Poland an ethno state? That's a good question. Benny Adam says that's literally the question people are having right now. Is Poland for Poles? And you're denying that it is an ethno state.
All you countries.
Why do you think Poland is an ethno state? He says it isn't.
all
So that's how they
European
define themselves.
countries, EU, and even those outside of the EU, like my country institutions, like have explicitly defined like themselves as being a citizen states in which both the majority nation and all national minorities need to have equal human and legal rights.
That's not what an ethno state is.
And so there is, yes, I know. So there is this big concept in Europe when you have a nation state.
That doesn't contradict what an ethno state is.
If I
I'm
was
saying
like,
the identity of the nation is being
audible, like, you know, is that my microphone not working?
No, we hear
We
you.
hear you.
People are just interrupting.
I mean, because like someone is like talking.
Okay, go ahead. Well, the next person to interrupt goes down to finish the one.
Anyway, in the European like story, the nation state is a state where you have the majority nation and you have an legally explicitly defined groups called national minorities. So in Poland, you have the Polish nation, and like in the constitution it says Poland is the nation of the Polish people and all other citizens that live in it, and you know it lists out human rights. So like a special place is given to explicitly legally defined like category of people called minority groups. So like there is a special care being taken to not have any sort of like unfair treatment of people just because they're a minority in this. So like that's really the difference of between just a regular liberal democratic like nation state like all of European countries are and an imagined ethno state that far right people want to institute, like the alt-right, etc. Like their goal is that they use the term ethno state, where they don't want like these national minorities to be basically like as well respected guests, that they want them heard and their rights taken away because this is not their land. So that's the difference between a regular nation state and an ethno state.
I'm not talking about the legal like constitution of the state. Citizens of the state. Technically speaking, what it means to be a Pole or a German is much more ethnically defined as opposed to what it means to be an American or Canadian. Americans, Canadians have had a long history of immigrants from various countries that assimilate into the identity of being a Canadian, which is not nearly as ethnically bound as what it means to be a Pole or a German. And so that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the legalities of it. I'm not talking about whether or not that state has minority communities. I'm talking about the general identity of the nation.
I'm not sure there is that difference between like states that are your typical traditional nation states and other states that are like multi-ethnic states or melting pot states or countries, I should say. That does exist. That doesn't necessarily.
Immigrants in Canada or America from Arab backgrounds.
We're going to talk about that
easier time
next.
assimilating into society.
That's exactly the sentence that I started saying. Like that does not carry over into like that means that the migrants are going to be treated better. In fact, a typical nation state in Europe treats its minorities much better than USA has been treating like black and brown and Muslim people in the last like 50 years.
I did not get that.
That's insanity.
All right. Can we read more about anti-Zionist American Jewish identity?
I mean, I think the guy who wrote whatever article or whatever you're reading is a little delusional.
All right. Well, we talked a lot about Jewish holidays and the way we frame our holidays and the aspects we emphasize and how we tend to frame ourselves as victims. And so this is how we apply sort of that philosophy to sort of modern geopolitics. One might think when it comes to Israel, we would cast this victimhood narrative aside. Zionism's core promise, after all, is to ensure that Jews are never powerless again. Israeli commentators often argue that refusing to be a victim is central to Israeli identity. But while Israeli and diaspora Jews do not depict Israel as powerless, we do often portray it as persecuted, the Jew of the nations, to use a popular establishment Jewish phrase, slandered, menaced, delegitimized like no other country on earth. The state of Israel, which its founders hoped to be fundamentally